Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. Welcome to today's episode of Sedat HR Digest. We want to say a very big thank you to you for watching us Sunday after Sunday. In today's episode, we are going to look at how to measure training effectiveness or measuring training effectiveness. And as usual, we are bringing you an expert in this field to help us with the deliberations. If you just join us, this is Sedat HR Digest brought to us by Sedat Consult. In this dynamic and rapid changing business landscape, you can depend on Sedat for innovation, dedicated and tailor-made HR solutions that meets your needs. Sedat is into HR advisory, talent acquisition, salary grading and structure, outsourcing, learning and development, salary benchmarking, and any other management training that helps to build capacity and put your business out there. Sedat is there to help you. You can reach Sedat Consult via our website on www.sedatconsultlimited or write to us on info@sedatconsultlimited.com. You can also call us on 0244 629245, 0244 629245 or 055 088 3936, 055 088 3936. Sedat's Consults is here to give you and help you with all your HR needs. All right, so like I said, today we are looking at measuring training effectiveness, and our guest is a known face on this platform. He is well vested in this area, an expert in the area of measuring training effectiveness. We want to acknowledge you, and so wherever you're watching us from, please feel free drop your name, your location in the comment box. We'll read it out and to duly acknowledge you. We also want to encourage you to like, share, comment on all our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Share the link with your colleagues, your friends, your loved ones, your fellow HR practitioners. Let them all come on board and let's learn together. Like I always say, this platform is a place where we learn, unlearn, and relearn. So that's HR Digest. We are here to help you impact positively on the bottom line. That is what we are here to do, to help you succeed and practice HR activities or innovative HR practices that put you out there as an HR practitioner. All right, so let me go straight to introduce our guest. And as I introduce him, please don't also forget to put your comment. If you have any question you want to ask, if you want to seek any clarification, feel free, drop it in the comment section. I will read it out for our resource person to help us out. All right, so our resource person today is Mr. Jeffrey McBoham. All right, so Jeff is a global learning and development, business, project management, equity, diversity and inclusion, and general human resource management and development professional with specialization in instructional design. And so I told you we are bringing you an expert in the field. All right, with instructional design, project management, performance management, and improvement learning strategy, advisory, and general human resource development. He is a principal consultant at Teampact Solutions, learning and performance consulting, training and development, human resource advisory, and certification preparation company based in Colombia, MD. All right, so Jeff is currently working. He works as a United States federal government contractor on a Department of Labor contract awarded to his parent company, AP Ventures, or why then he holds 3 master's degrees in business, HR management and development, and instructional design. He also holds HRCI and PMI SPHR and PMP professional certification, as well as SHRM CP certificate, SCP certification. Prior to moving to the United States, Jeffrey worked as a legislative research officer in the Parliament of Ghana. He is a big man, and trust me, today we would have an amazing time with Jeffrey McBoham, a very well resourced professional, and he will be helping us to discuss our topic for today. And so let me introduce my guest. Hi, Jeff. You're welcome once again to Sadat HR Digest.
Thank you very much, Patience.
You've been missed. We've all missed you here.
I've been extremely quiet. I've been working a lot lately, behind the scenes.
All right, so welcome to today's episode. Today we are looking at measuring training effectiveness, and as a professional in instructional design, learning and development, we are very hopeful that we will have an insightful session with you on how to measure training effectiveness in our various organizations. And so before we go into our conversation, I have few people who have dropped their names and location. I would want to read it out, and then we can go straight into our conversation for today. So I have Josephine Aqua. Josephine is watching us from Takrady. Thank you, Josephine. Salamat Zakari. Yes, Salamat. Thank you so much. I met you in Kumasi, so now I can attach an image to the name. Thank you so much for watching, and Sunday after Sunday we are very grateful. I know there are a lot of you out there. Please drop your name, your location. We want to acknowledge you, and like I said, don't forget to drop your name, and then drop your questions. You want to seek any clarification, you want to comment on the discussion, you want to participate. Last week I think I gave it to Phyllis. I don't know who is going to take it this week. So last week, Phyllis was my most participating audience, and I mean, she was very, very engaging last week. So let's see who picks it today. Okay, so Josephine says, hello, Jeff, long time. Yes, it's true. It's really been a long time. We've all missed him. Ama Brefi says, okay, so just Julia from Tema. Thank you, Julia. Good to have you here. Right. So, Jeff, let's go straight into our discussion for today. We are looking at measuring training effectiveness. All right. So, first of all, we would want you to help us understand what it means to measure training effectiveness. Why is it important for us to even pay attention and even spend time to measure the effectiveness of training after participating, and how do we go about measuring training effectiveness in our organization? I think I've boxed all the questions together, so we're going to have a very long talk from Jeff.
Yeah. Well, but thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patience. That's a very important question, and I really like the fact that you kind of put everything together, because, if you happen to be a business person, someone like me, I happen to be a business person in addition to be a training person. When you leave I would say, when you get out of the training room and you get to the business table, when you speak to CEOs, basically the challenge that they have with training most of the time is these people don't know what they're doing. It's unfortunate. That's the truth. Because at the end of the day, business people are challenged by, I would say, the organizations. They're challenged by the stock market. They're challenged by a whole lot of, I would say, a plethora of various stakeholders to really justify the value of what they do. So as training professionals, for us not to really be viewed as a cost center, for us to be viewed as a value-added solution to the business, it's very important that we find a way to really establish our true value to the organization. And we do that through measurement of training programs. Now, unfortunately, what happens is most of the time when people attend training, what they look for is whether the food was good, whether the training was fun, whether the instructor was great, XYZ. but that's not what the person who actually is paying money for the training is looking for. What that person is looking for most of the time is, did this training solve the problems that really prompted us to engage in the training in the first place? And I'm trying to use this to lead us to start thinking from a business point of view before we actually start thinking about training. So when it comes to the training point of view, I think the most important thing for us as training professionals is to make sure that the learning objectives that we write, okay, that after the training, that we go through a process of evaluation to really establish and clarify and justify that we met those objectives. That is how we add value to, or that is how we prove that our training was a success or failure or any such thing. Now, there are two main, I would say, methodologies that I use. There's generally the Kirkpatrick 4 levels of evaluation approach, and then there's the Jack Phillips 5 levels approach. However, the standard approach, which is used by about 90% of organizations, is the Kirkpatrick 4 levels approach. And with the Jack Phillips approach, what they do is there's an add-on. It's called level 5, which is really evaluates cost benefit. And I'm going to go through that model. When I go through the two models, you're going to understand the process involved. Before I get into kind of explaining the Kirkpatrick approach, what I want everybody to understand is, when we're building training programs, okay, the first thing that we do is we ask ourselves, what is the business problem that we're facing? And then we dig one layer underneath and then ask ourselves, how is this showing up in the workplace? Then we dig one layer underneath and say, what are the learning challenges that we're dealing with? And then we dig one layer underneath again. So it's 4 levels down. And at the base level is, are people really even enjoying the work they're doing? So when it comes to the Kirkpatrick approach, and interestingly, Don Kirkpatrick was my former boss in Virginia. He and Jim Kirkpatrick, they came up with the approach that has been used for all these years. When it comes to the Kirkpatrick approach, what we do is, it's also a 4-step approach that starts at the base level and moves gradually up to the top level. So we have a 4-step process that starts with reaction. At the reactionary level, when we finish a training program, the question we ask is, how did people enjoy the training? How good was the facilitator? How good was the facility? How good was the food? You know, so we just find people's immediate reaction. So the level 1 evaluation, which aligns with the base level, would be, I would say, reaction. Then ahead or above that, we go to learning. If the training was effective from I would say, a reactionary point of view, then the next question we ask is, did the training really lead to the learning that the people were looking for? So at that point, what we do is we have to ask ourselves, if we had certain learning objectives, for example, excuse me, if we say at the end of this training, the participant will be able to do A, B, C, what we do during the learning phase of evaluation is we ask if A, B, C were achieved and the level of mastery that people were able to demonstrate. That's the next one. Then when we go a third layer up, we start looking at whether that learning really translated and transferred to the workplace. I hope I'm not making this complicated to anybody. But so the level 3 is called transfer. And what we're looking at level 3 is, did the new learning that people got from the training, did it actually show up in the workplace? Did it show up in the form of people demonstrating different behaviors? Did it show up in the form of new data supporting the proof, or new data coming up as proof that the training actually is making an impact in the workplace? And then once we get that, then we go to the 4th level and then start looking at the business results. Okay, if new data has really changed, how is that really impacting the business? So level 4 is called business impact. So it's level 1 reaction, level 2 learning, level 3 transfer, and level 4 reaction. So that is the Kirkpatrick model. Those are the 4 levels of the Kirkpatrick model. However, another friend who happens to be a good friend of mine, Jack Phillips, he has also the ROI Institute. He goes to level 5, and at level 5, he's saying, show me the dollar equivalent of the change. So basically, beyond level 4, whether it made an impact to the company or not, at that point, he does more like a cost-benefit financial calculation, and that can get quite complicated to look at the dollar value and the dollar value and the dollar impact of the training. So let's say if we put 10,000 cedis, okay, if we put 10,000 cedis or $10,000 in the training, at the end of it all, he wants to use a quantitative measure to establish whether the training impact led to 11,000, 12,000. That's when we're going to say the training became a value-added solution. But if it fell below that, then what we start saying is training did not really meet its intended impact. So those are the 2 models that are used. Do we have any questions? I know I've spoken quite a bit. I want to be sure that folks are really understanding what I'm saying before we.
Yes, I think we are understanding. It's very clear. Yes, very clear. Please, if you are out there and you are okay, give us feedback. Let us know you are okay, or if there's any part up to where Jeff has gotten to. If you want him to clarify anything, please put it there, and he will do that for us. But you keep dropping your questions or clarification. I'll read it out when it comes, so he responds to it. But Jeff, whilst we wait for them, I think we can go ahead with a presentation.
Sure. No, so those are the 2 models that I've really spoken about.
All right. I thought you were going to.
Questions. I would love to take your questions.
Okay. All right. So we've heard from Jeff, and he's introduced the 2 main models that he uses in measuring training effectiveness. He's spoken about the Kirkpatrick's 4 model, and then Phillips model, right? So okay, let me go to the comment. I have a question here. Right, so Patel says the name of the last level. For which one? Is it Kirkpatrick's model or Phillips model? So if it is Kirkpatrick's own, that is results.
That is. You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
I guess you give me 100 over 100 here.
Absolutely. So the thing is, with the Kirkpatrick model, it starts with reaction. It goes to learning. It goes to transfer to the workplace, and level 4 is the results. Okay, now Jack Phillips takes it one step further, and he calls it level 5. And Jack Phillips actually owns the ROI Institute, Return on Investment Institute. Now, what they do is they call it ROI, Return on Investment. And at that point, they're not just looking at the results, they're looking at the financial impact of the result. So, okay, if the training did move the country from maybe 500 million to maybe if you move from the country from point A to point B, level 5 is really looking at how much financial change did we move from level 4 to level 5. And at that point, we're looking at the dollar amount, the dollar equivalent. Because at the end of it, if you got money from IMF, if you got a loan from somewhere, the question they're going to be asking is, how much did it really bring to, I would say, the organization? So that is the name of level 5. Jack Phillips, it's called ROI.
Right. Thank you very much, Jeff. And so let me just summarize the models. We have Kirkpatrick's model, which has 4 levels. So you have reaction, you have learning, you have transfer, and you have results. So these 4 belongs to Kirkpatrick's model. Right. Now, Phillips' approach adds on one more model or one more level, which then makes it 5. And like Jeff explained, Philip is looking at, if we put in $1 in, what's returns are we getting from the dollar? So we are looking at the monetary equivalent to whatever you've returns to whatever you have invested in the training. So he added the ROI, and that is return on investment. So if I added $1 or I invested $1 in a training, what returns did I get after investing that? Did I get all my returns back and made additional benefits, or it was totally a waste of money? All right, so these are the two main models Jeff had, and I'm so excited that Jeff had taken time to explain this to us. Now, okay, so Pato comes and says thanks. So I guess he gets the last level now. Judy, is it Judy? Thank you for joining. I see you. Thank you for joining us from Swedru. Is it because yesterday I came to Swedru? Right. Thank you so much for joining us. Right. Let me go to Jeff. So when assessing training effectiveness, okay, what strategies do line managers, or what strategies should line managers or HR practitioners employ to differentiate between the short-term improvement and then sustained long-term impact? I don't know whether it will still fall under the Kirkpatrick's model, or Patrick, I don't know if my question is clear.
I think I'm understanding your question, but can you ask it again if you don't mind?
Why? So we want to look at the strategies to use to measure, or if we want to show differentiate between short-term improvement and then the long-term impact, what strategies should we use to be able to assess the difference between the short-term and then the long-term impact of training?
What I would say, my response to your question would be this is something that can still fall within the frameworks that I just talked about. And let me explain further. What I mean here is if you understand the framework as an umbrella, I would say strategy that you use, that would capture the long-term approach to it. However, along the various phases, okay, level one, let's say for example, let's say you're running a training at XYZ hotel, okay. The first and the short-term evaluation strategy would be you look and see if that hotel is a good fit for your training programs. So at that point, you can just evaluate that hotel premises. You can evaluate the food. You can evaluate their parking. You can evaluate all the things, the various amenities, the air conditioning and things like that, and then determine if it falls within your larger long-term sustained strategy. So if that's the approach you're going to use, and you say that is not a good fit, you can choose to go to a different hotel and say, well, in the short term, this is not what we need. Maybe 10 years down the line, when you fixed your amenities, will come back. But within the long term or within the larger strategy, we want to go this route. Okay. If you use a learning methodology that works within a short term, because the answer to every question in life is it depends. So let's say you utilize, I would say, if you utilize one approach, let's say pre-post training to measure learning. Let's say you do a pre-post survey. Let's say before people attend the training, you survey them on their confidence level, let's say customer service, on their confidence level in doing A, B, C, D, E. And they say their aggregate trust and belief in themselves is 0.5. And if after the training with a new skill set, they move to 0.15, then you can gauge and say the aggregate, I would say, improvement in performance or the degree of proficiency has improved by, I would say, 1. It moved from 0.5 to 1.5. So that's what you say. So that is a short-term measure that can be used in making decisions within the workplace or within the larger long-term strategy. However, if you want to use that as part of a long-term thing, you can say, because this moved this way, we are going to approach level 3 in a different way. So it looks a bit unclear there, but I hope people are catching that. It's kind of a strategic thing that we have to really understand properly.
Mm, mm. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jeff. So, Elizabeth says insightful. Thank you, Elizabeth. Mary Ikuya says that she's watching us from Tantra Hill. Thank you very much, Mary. So, let me go back to Jeff. In what ways can HR leverage on data analytics and metrics to quantify the return on investment of a training program?
I would say that's a very good question. And I think increasingly we have to lean in that direction. You know, I think most of the time, just listening to how people feel about something, just listening to how people feel about something skews the data. What do I mean? Let's use a situation where you take your son or your daughter to the hospital and the doctor only says, well, the doctor only asks your son or daughter, how do you feel? And the daughter says, I feel good. How would a doctor know whether the child feels good or not? So what needs to be done is you have to take the temperature. So it's important that we start shifting from common words to actually data. When you come to this part of the world, okay, I would say when people are going through certain challenges, and the reason why they tend to move faster in a lot of spaces, and I see Ghana really starting to employ a lot of data analytics. The reason why I would say the Western world moves faster is they tend to look at data rather than what people say. XYZ, YRDO, XYZ, YACO, but what does that mean? Did the person move the country from maybe XYZ GDP to XYZ to a higher level of GDP? That's when you actually see the shift. So it's important that we get in the practice of collecting data. It's important that we get in the practice of transferring qualitative data into quantitative metrics. If you have it, let's give an example. There was a time that I was driving around town and I saw a lot of people standing by a traffic light, and unbeknownst to me, what they were doing was they were counting the total number of cars that go through traffic at a certain point. Why were they doing that? And I asked them, I said, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you counting the cars? They said, we want to know between this time and that time the number of cars that go through this traffic to determine if we have to bring a more powerful traffic light there. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. Everything that we do, we have to find ways and means of quantifying those qualitative pieces of information that we get and changing them into quantitative metrics that will give us a better insight into what we are doing, what is really happening, and how we can take advantage of that to really make decisions that would be more or less much more pragmatic and much more reliable when it comes to decision making. I have a friend who works in an insurance company. Do you know that when you apply for life insurance, for example, okay, some insurance companies have data and financial information. I'll say they have analytical information to determine as close as within 2 to 3 years when you are going to die. They know that. Why? Because they collect data from hospitals. They collect data, historic data from people who have certain ailments and what the typical time frames that people die. They have averages. They have a higher, I would say, the higher end of it and the lower end of it. So before an insurance company sells you life insurance in this part of the world, they already know. Okay, they know that if the person is, let's say, 35 years and the person has A, B, C, D conditions, by 67 or between 65 and 68, the person should die. So they determine whether they want to give you insurance or not, they want to insure you or not. But that is the power of analytics. So basically, when it comes to evaluation as well, it's very important that we leverage quantitative information. But collecting of that data requires the use of data scientists I know that within the HR community in Ghana, and I'm going to mention his name, there's a gentleman, is it called Dr. something, Dr. Affle something? He does a lot of
Yes, Dr. Afo.
Dr. Affle. He does a lot of data analytics, and every time I tell my friends, I'm like, people should pay attention to this guy because what he's doing is very important. So I would say those of us who have had the experience and the opportunity to see how some of these things are leveraged over time, we have to start pointing people to organizations like SEDAT, like folks that are actually trying to do something about it versus just keeping the status quo and holding the country back, holding things back. Even the HR practice, I would say, we have to start employing more and more data. So that's a very good question. Thank you very much, Madam Patience. I hope I answered the question properly.
Sure, you did. We have to start employing more data and making meaningful decisions out of the data that we gather. And like Jeff said, I was just this past week I was in a training where we spoke about Kirkpatrick's method and then
Oh,
Phillips.
really?
And so I've learned how to compute return on investment for both tangible and intangible
There
benefits.
you go.
Right, and
Oh,
and and
that's
Dr. Afo was the facilitator. He did a really good job
oh, yes, yes, yes.
for us, right? So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to ask Jeff his thoughts on pre and post training assessment. All right,
Absolutely.
so don't go anywhere. Please stay tuned. We'll be back. Right, thank you so much, and welcome back from the break. That's a SEDAT HR Digest, and we are discussing measuring training effectiveness. Our resource person as Jeff McBoa, my big bro, big senior man, a known face on SEDAT HR Digest. We've had insightful discussions so far. We've spoken about the two main methods of evaluating training effectiveness. We looked at the Kirkpatrick's model. We've looked at Jack Phillips' approach as well, and we've also looked at how HR practitioners can leverage on data and analytics to ensure or to make decisions on trainings. All right. So before we left, we went on break. I said when we come, I was going to ask Jeff what he thinks about pre and post training evaluation. So Jeff, what are your thoughts on incorporating pre and post training assessment to measure knowledge gain and retention among employees?
Thank you very much. Now, before I even touch on your question, okay, there's something that you said prior to taking the break that I think is very important for us. You said we need to leverage data to make meaningful decisions and meaningful distinctions. And the reason why I want to emphasize that is that it is one of the causes of unclarity in our part of the world. Okay, so let me tell you something. Before I get to your question, let me tell you something. I have seen organizations where people have been shown data to prove that they were hired at XYZ dollar amount and that their total contribution to the company was less than that. So they've been given an opportunity to accept a lower salary or else they have to leave the organization. If we're paying you $100,000 and you are giving us $60,000 worth of work, because that's what the data shows, then we're telling you, we're giving you a meaningful justification that you are not bringing much to the company and that you don't deserve to really be making that amount. So that's the reason why I want to emphasize on that. When we leverage the use of data, we make meaningful decisions and meaningful distinctions. It's very important that you use that phrase. Please let me know. Did you pick that up from somewhere? I mean, you are being stellar today, Madam Patient. Where do you know?
Oh, Jeff, let's talk after the show.
Absolutely. I'm like, wow, that was
Well,
you actually picked up. That was very deep.
We'll talk after the show.
We'll talk after the show. We'll ask you a question again. But I thought it's very important for your audience to hear that, because you don't want that to slide by. That is very key. Making meaningful distinctions. When you tell a person that we're going to insure you at 500, and you tell another person the same age that we're going to insure you at 2,000, people are going to get angry. If you don't make that meaningful, you don't make that rational distinction and decision to prove to the person why you are making that decision. And that is where data analytics come in. But please ask that question, the last question you asked.
So we are looking at, I just want to know your thoughts on posts,
Pre-post.
incorporating post and then pre and post training assessment to in during training, so we'll be able to know how they've learned, okay, the learning and the retention of whatever training they participated in.
So let me use an interesting analogy here that will make it much easier for a lot of people to digest. You go to the hospital, a person goes to the hospital, their temperature is over 100. That's pre-assessment. And then they get through the treatment. 5 days later, their temperature comes to normal 92, 93. Post-assessment. So they know that they have been cured. Okay. So the essence of pre-post assessments in training is you kind of gauge before people are given the information that they're supposed to receive in training. You kind of gauge where they are as a baseline. Okay. You gauge where they are as a baseline before they got to the training. And then when you do that, you ask questions to establish the gaps where you think you need to emphasize during the training. So a person you'll be surprised most of the time when you do a pre-assessment. That's when you realize that the 10 things you wanted to teach, the people need only 3 of them. So why would you spend the 10 hours teaching them the 10 things that they already know 7? And instead you use what if you use the 10 hours to teach them the 3 things, or maybe you spend 2 hours to brush on the 7 things and spend the remaining 8 hours to focus on the 3 things that they need to know, so that their level of proficiency raises higher. Okay, so that is the thought behind pre-post. It's a way to assess how much of a learning impact that happened. But it's not just pre-post. You can also use something called treatment group versus, I would say, what is it? Experiment. It's a treatment group versus a standard, maybe non-experimental group. So, for example, if you want to know how the training impacted maybe a group of people, what you may want to do is you may say, okay, out of the 200 people in this company, we're going to send 30 to training. When they finish the training, we're going to study them and watch them and see how their training performance is going to change over a 9-month period. When we collect the data, when we realize that their impact to the company is higher than the people who did not attend the training, then we can use that as a baseline to say, going forward, we expect you to be able to do ABC, because this is what we know that the training is going to bring to you. Because the 30 people that attended the training, their sales moved from an average of 10 per day to 35 per day. It means the total training impact was 25 per day. So that is the thought process behind pre-post assessments, is to really establish the gap or the learning, what people really learned.
Right. So pre-post assessment is to establish the gap and to know what people really learn. Thank you so much, Jeff. Let me go to the comments and see if we have some comments over there. Okay. Right, so Eliane says she's watching us from Accra. I hope I pronounced your name well. Zachary is a good one there, Jeff. Good to have you with us again. Yes, good to have Jeff again on the show. Please post any question you have on how to measure trading effectiveness. Now we have Jeff. Let's ask him all the questions that are on our minds, and I believe that he would help us to respond to wait. So while we wait for your questions, your comments, and your clarifications, let me go to Jeff again. So Jeff, how can HRs ensure that the assessment methods used align with organizational overall strategy goals and objectives?
Well, that's another very good question, Madam Patience. Um, first and foremost, every training must start with something called a training needs analysis. Okay. Now, during the training needs analysis phase, you're looking at three things. You are looking at the organizational level, the strategic level, what the organization wants to achieve from the training. Then you look at the performance gap. I mean, I hope I'm not getting too technical here. You want to look at the performance gap. That is the gap between where people want, and I'm going to use an illustration to understand that, to help folks understand that, where the organization needs to be in order to achieve what the organization wants to achieve. So once you establish that gap, then you look at the people who are going to go into the training. So it's organizational, it's performance, and then it's the performance involved. Okay, when you get these three levels, then you start showing that alignment. So as you write your learning objectives, those objectives should kind of relate to the long-term organizational strategy. And that is how you kind of help to align it. Let me use an example to illustrate what I'm talking about. I know most people, let me go into sports, makes it easier. Most people like the Ghana Black Stars. Okay.
I believe Chelsea would definitely feature, but don't forget Liverpool because
No, I'm not going to talk about any English team. I know we're talking about HR in Ghana, so I don't want to talk about Chelsea or Liverpool. But let's talk about the Black Stars. Okay. If the Black Stars want to go to the World Cup, okay, that's the national agenda. That is the GFA agenda. Ghana wants them to go to the World Cup. Okay, so that's the organizational expectation. And then you have to ask yourself, what did they do the last time that didn't qualify them to go? Then you look at, I would say, countries that went. What did they do differently from us that made them go? Okay, so if we find out, that is, so the fact that they want to go to the World Cup is the larger organizational strategy. Okay, the organizational end goal, the organizational expected outcome. That is the game plan. That's where we want to go. Then you look at, let's say, if South Africa went, let's say if Nigeria went, if another country went, now we start looking at data analytics. What did Nigeria do differently that Ghana didn't do? Okay, Nigeria scored an average of 10 goals per game. But guess what? Ghana didn't go because Ghana scored an average of 4 goals per game. So then we say we're going to bring a coach that is going to be able to move us from 4 goals per game to 10 or more goals per game. And that is what is going to assure us that when we replicate what Nigeria did, that's going to qualify us to be able to at least get close to going to the World Cup. Then we start looking at the people themselves. So the organizational, and then the performance gap is the data analytics, and then the performers, that's the third level. The people who are going to play the game. Can this XYZ player score 10 goals per game? No, take him out of the team. Can Kwame Sule from Kumasi score 10 goals per game? Yes, bring him into the team. So you start bringing the right personnel. So even as we are HR professionals, it's important that we don't operate in silos. When we are talking about the training department should be talking to recruitment. Recruitment should be talking to employee relations. There should be a cross pollination, a total alignment and aggregation, so that the various roles can understand how they kind of, align and support each other to make sure that the larger organizational mission is met. I hope what I'm saying and the little analogy that I'm using is bringing it much, much clearer.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Thank you very much, Jeff. All right, so please keep your questions coming, keep your clarifications coming. If you want to comment, feel free to comment. And so like the question which I just asked Jeff, we are looking at how HRs can ensure that the methods we use in assessing training effectiveness align with organizational objectives. And he has mentioned that every training must start with a training needs analysis. And he's spoken about three main levels where this can be done: the organizational expectations, where we are looking at the organizational goal, what we expect, what we are looking forward to, and then the performance gap. And he mentioned that that's where the analytics come, that's where the figures come in. So you want to look at what didn't make this person perform well, how come his colleague did better, what can we do? All right, so then you are trying to identify the gap. Then we move to the performers, that's the employees, the people themselves. Okay, so you want to know, does this person have what it takes for us to achieve our expectation? If the person has, then mean that the person is coming into the team. And he says something that I love so much. It was like, as HRs, we don't have to operate in silos. We need to work together with all stakeholders, with everybody, so that it would help our job. Very insightful discussion today. We have few minutes, and so I just want Jeff to give us some few how do I put it? Let's say advantages. Why do we have to pay attention to training effect? What benefits exactly? That's what I'm looking for. What benefits does assessing or measuring training effectiveness bring to us as organization? So if you can look at it, benefits at the organizational level, that's the overall, and then benefits to the employee who participated in the training, I'll be very grateful.
Thank you very much, Madam Patience. That's a very important question. Let me use a phrase in Ghana. They usually say "NAA," and I'm going to explain why. NAA. Let me use that to kind of tell a story, and to kind of explain the Kirkpatrick model and the Jack Phillips model. Okay. Now, let's go back to the Kirkpatrick model and the Jack Phillips model. The reason why we have levels is that when you start evaluating, you evaluate at the reactionary level, you ask yourself, then okay, that is the reason why they learned something. That is the reason why we actually were able to see a greater impact in the workplace. That is the reason why we found out that the organization improved. That is the reason why they get paid more. Those are the 5 levels. So, first and foremost, I think having someone within an organization, and I think most organizations in Ghana, I see folks doing that. So that is coming up a lot. Dedicate to become, I would say, monitoring and evaluation experts, getting people to understand the data processes for how to evaluate and quantify training impact is very important, because the bottom line is what gets measured gets done. If you tell your child to sweep his or her room and they don't do it, if you don't go and check, how are you going to know whether they did it or not? So if we're dedicating dollars, if we're dedicating cities, if we're dedicating kwacha into training programs, it's important that we establish the financial measure of that training. We have to show value. We don't want a situation where whenever there are layoffs, the very people who train people, training is usually the first. Oh, we don't need training anymore. We need more sales. We don't, because training is not justifying its value. So by measuring training programs and demonstrating the value that training brings to the organization, we are establishing our, I would say, our attachment to organizational strategy. We are demonstrating our improved performance and value to the company. We are utilizing a methodology to show what we bring to the company. And then we are also making sure that we are building the organizational capacity to be able to really be a world-class company. Some people will tell you, I won't fly this airline because their services are not good. You know why? Because they are not trained properly. Because if the training started with a needs analysis where you actually had one department go to the complaints department and told the complaints department, this is what people are complaining. The chicken you are giving us in flight is not good. Then we go back to training and say, we ask them, what kind of chicken do you want? We want XYZ chicken. Then we train people on how to make that chicken. And then we actually we make sure they fully understand how to make that chicken. We teach them in the workplace how to really make that chicken. And then we have them put those chicken on the flights. So that alignment and that cross-pollination and that utilization of the, I would say, evaluation approach in real day life, you need somebody who fully understands it and who speaks the language, the various people in the trenches, the people in the field doing the work. I mean, somebody can sit back, okay? Somebody can sit back and look at the architecture behind it and talk all the training language. But when you're talking to the people, teach the people in a language they understand. Chicken will put some more seasoning in it. That's what people want. So the idea is we have to have people within the organization who really know the processes. Like Madam Patience, when you said you attended the training, what the gentleman taught you is absolutely correct. And you definitely are going to pick that and bring that to your organization. You bring that to different people here and there. And once that message starts spreading, you find out that generally, I quite remember an organization reached out to me and said, customer service in our country is so poor and that we need more customer service training. And I said, that makes a lot of sense. But what is the data? What are you showing me to prove that customer service is poor? Have you given the people the training and they haven't really gone through it? Have you given the people the training and they are choosing not to apply it? Maybe the people don't know what to do. Maybe the people don't know what the foreigners expect. So always start with the needs analysis. When you go to the hospital, the reason why you go through a triage process, the reason why they take your temperature, they run your labs and everything before they show the doctor, is that they want to bring data before the doctor for the doctor to fully understand what is truly happening to you. Not what you saw in your dreams, but what is truly happening to you. And once you fully, and once the doctor fully understands that, the doctor will craft a medical solution that will resolve that issue and it will be administered to you. And once that gets administered, the next thing is, the person gets healed and the doctor has to write a final report and say, this is what the person presented, this is what we did, these were the outcomes. At the end of it all, this is how we solve the problem, and for future generations to take a look at it. So the key thing is, there's so many benefits. The benefits are, I would say, way too many for me to just count right here. The uncountable benefits. I would say that when it comes to training, it's important that we train people to fully understand the training process and to fully understand how the training is evaluated. What gets measured gets done. And that is why we have to invest in training and evaluation of training programs.
Thank you very much, Jeff. What gets measured gets done. Insightful discussion. And I mean, I picked something when you were talking about given the illustration, the medical going to the hospital and all that. So it means that the training needs analysis we do would help us identify the gaps, and then the gaps will help us to craft a solution to whatever we have identified during the analysis. Thank you so much, Jeff. All too soon, our time is up, and we have Michael says, okay, Michael just joined us and he's watching us from Cape Coast. Thank you so much, Michael Kisi, for joining us. I guess today you came in a bit late, and so you would want to get the link and go over the discussion again. It's been a very insightful discussion with Mr. Jeffrey Mark Boham, and our resource person for today. I mean, an expert in all the fields in HR and strategy. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been good
I wouldn't
having
call
you.
myself an expert. I'm still learning.
Right, but experts also learn. So
Yeah,
it only shows your mastery in the field. So you are an expert in our subject matter for today.
you should see me. You should see me where I'm sitting right now. I'm surrounded by books. You know, my late dad told me, if you know you can lift boxes, just read books every day.
And that's very true, eh?
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
very true. If you know you can't lift boxes, read books every day. And
read
that
it.
is why you have to keep listening and watching Sadat HR Digest, because we help you. We explain the books you are reading better for you. We make it more simple for you to go and practice. And so thank you so much, Jeff, for coming, and thank you all for joining in today's episode. We have learned, or today we discussed measuring training effectiveness. Next week, we'll be coming your way with another interesting episode. Today is weekend. Please relax. Make sure you rest well and prepare well for the week ahead. Make sure you set your goal or your expectation. Set a target for yourself next week and make sure you go through. On Friday, go through your target. Measure yourself. Okay, so it's not only training, but assess what the target you set for yourself, and just make sure that whatever goal you set for yourself was met. Make sure, be intentional about meeting your expectation or your goal for next week, because there are a lot of distractions in the system, especially when the year is coming to an end. So many things has to be done and all that. If you are not careful, you would realize that the most important things have been left undone, and so you want to set a goal around it so that it will help you keep focus on what you need to do. We'll meet you next week with another interesting episode. My name is Patience Crunchy, and I have been your host for today's episode. Have a good evening and enjoy your week. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Patience.